Hi again guys, and welcome back to a series now within Gran Turismo Sport, which we haven't featured in quite some time. Quattroporte for Gran Turismo, the series for the four-door saloons, sedans, super saloons even, and this is the definition of a super saloon, but also simultaneously, you could quite justifiably say that it's also a muscle car. And of course, the vehicle in question is the Dodge Charger, in particular the newer generation Charger, when it became a four-door. This is the facelifted version of said four-door with, I would say, one of the best looking rear light arrangements of any current production car. I'm a big fan of the way it looks from the back, and of course in particular this is the SRT Hellcat version. Now personally I think I do prefer the Challenger Hellcat over the Charger, but both of them are nevertheless very good. And the specs on both of them are very similar anyway. They use the same engine, they've got the same power and torque. The weight is a little bit different, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did add the Challenger to the game as well. To be honest, I thought I'd already seen it in some of the promotional photos and footage, so maybe it was just this car and I'd mistaken it in a menu or something like that. But for the moment at least, this car is indeed running in a very exclusive club, because although it isn't the only sedan in the game, the Mazda Atenza of course is also, but they're hardly rivals. They're not even close, in fact. This is a full-on super saloon. The Mazda is just a saloon. That's about where it ends. Borderline sports saloon, but even then that's kind of being generous, really. So this car's main rivals are, of course, the Mustang and the Camaro, as far as the game currently goes, and of course we can hope for it to have some new rivals in the near future. Now, as far as the specs on this car, American cars often have very good pricing in the world of Gran Turismo, and this one is no exception. You're looking at around 78 grand, which makes it one of the most affordable performance cars in the game. Pretty much the most affordable thing this side of a hot hatch. So that's pretty good, especially given that this car has 707 horsepower immediately out of the bat. It's also got 650 foot-pounds of torque. Now, in a car that weighs almost 2 tons, you need that kind of power and torque. Or at least you do if you're trying to go quickly, of course. Now, the fact that this has so much power means that even though it does weigh a massive 1,980 kilos, or 2 tons, as we said, it still puts out over 350 horsepower per ton. That's not bad. That's like high-end modified hot hatch territory. So, for a 2-ton car, not bad at all. And of course, given that the car has 707 horsepower, it does indeed run in the N700 category. Now, for me personally, I must admit that I do take some issue with the N-class rating systems on Gran Turismo, because although they are, of course, based on power, that's not really the way performance works, because in fully tuned form, this car is running in the N1000 category, up against stuff like the LaFerrari, the Nissan GTR, or the Veyron. That's not really an accurate form of racing, given that the car is not designed to go up against vehicles like that. At the same time, though, in lower classes, I have heard multiple, not complaints, but people voicing their concerns about vehicles being by far too OP, such as the Porsche in the lower end classes like N400, N500, and I totally agree with that for the same reason, and that is, a car's performance is not directly influenced by its power. Of course the power plays a big role, but you can't just have the power rating as the be-all and end-all, because you can have a car with 700 horsepower that weighs 3 tons, but then you could have a 700 horsepower car that weighs half a ton. That would hardly be fair for them to be in the same class, and that really is the case here. Now, of course, you don't have to take it up to N1000, that is the choice that you have to make, but even in the N5, 6 or 700 classes, you are going to definitely come across vehicles like Porsche GT3s, Honda NSXs, Nissan GTRs, and it is categorically going to struggle against those cars. Not because it's bad, in fact this is a really good super saloon. It's one of the fastest super saloons of the Gran Turismo franchise, especially in terms of sheer acceleration, and it's one of the most powerful as well. But for cornering ability, well, of course it's going to struggle. It's a big, heavy, rear-wheel drive, almost 1,000 horsepower car in fully tuned form, and straight out of the bat, it's already heavy, and it's already torquey, and it's already powerful, so you're immediately working at a disadvantage, in effect having a dragster going up against track cars. If, of course, you want to look at it that way, which I do. And the fact that power is not the be-all and end-all can also be highlighted by those comments about vehicles like the Porsche GT3, because with a Porsche, it's similar to something like a Mazda RX-7 in that the performance which the car has in all of its generations has always been good for going beyond its raw numbers. So to base your entire racing system on those fallible numbers is just inherently flawed. As we've seen time and time again from rivals matches on this channel, more often than not, the car with lesser on-paper numbers will win. That happens so often that it cannot be ignored. So for this vehicle to be judged purely based on one number, it's just not an accurate way of racing. And I'm surprised, to be honest, that Gran Turismo and Polyphony specifically went ahead and used that system, because it's a system which is just not as accurate as the PP system on Gran Turismo 6 and 5. Those were far more accurate systems to use than this one. Now, it's not an awful system. You can still work around it, of course, and keep the car in lower classes, but what if I don't want to? On Gran Turismo 6, for instance, you could have a 1,000 horsepower Mercedes C63 sedan go up against an 880 horsepower or 840 horsepower Audi RS6. It didn't matter that the power was different because they were still well matched. Now, though, that's not really going to be allowed to happen because you've got supercars, super sports cars, super saloons even, all running in these same kind of categories. However, with that all to one side, speaking of this car specifically, I've touched on it before in some tuning which I did for it in the N1000 class, but I have to say it's a really good car in terms of how it handles its power and its weight. So if you do want to try out something that's pretty much different to any other car in the game, then certainly give this car a try, and it's very affordable. But that's it for this pick overall. Of course, I'll see you guys next time, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.